Hi, welcome to the retrospective exhibit of Ron Stokes.
Hi, I'm Greg Vadney, the Executive Director of the Rahr-West Art Museum, and we're so thrilled to have been able to host the Ron Stokes retrospective. Ron taught us many, many lessons during his life with his artwork, with his education, but what he probably taught us most, and what we hope that you get out of this exhibit and this streaming event, is an understanding that everyone is an artist, that everyone has the ability to create art. And though art can define parts of who you are, there's no right way to be an artist. Ron was an artist for decades, and he taught many of the artists that are around us in Manitowoc today. And all of that collection of art knowledge was probably intended to beautify, to communicate, and to make Manitowoc a better place. We're grateful to Dolly, the entire Stokes family, all the people that shared their artwork as part of this wonderful exhibit and celebration of genuinely one of the great artists of our community's history. And we thank you for tuning in and visiting the Rahr-West Art Museum, especially right now, especially in a time where it's so difficult to go outside, to try to enjoy different things and live life in some ways like you normally would. We thank you. We'll be with you in the long haul here at the Rahr-West, and we're excited to bring exhibits like this to you in the future.
Hi, I'm Dolly Stokes, wife of Ron Stokes for 61 years, and I'm here to talk a little bit about Ron and his paintings. And I hope that some of the stories that I can tell you about the paintings will also give you a little bit of an inner knowledge of the kind of Ron's personality. And for those of you that know Ron and are watching this, welcome. To those of you who are just getting acquainted with him, I hope that I can shed a little bit of information on his work and how he did it. Although I didn't watch him paint very often. He painted at home, downstairs in the basement, and he painted at his gallery. And when he would come upstairs with a painting, I would say, wow, does that color look the same as it did downstairs? And he'd say, no, it looks totally different. So he never, when he painted downstairs, the light wasn't all that good. This is the start of the exhibit. This is the first paintings, pieces of artwork that you see as you come in. And the top one here is very old. Ron did that in kindergarten. And it was a picture, a drawing, crayons, of skiers. And you could tell from that time on that he had an imagination, and it carried through. This is a sketch of him when he was just starting out his career as an art teacher. And I don't know if he was demonstrating for one of his classes or what it was, but it's a quick sketch. And well, I never knew he was that handsome really until I saw the image of him. In his mind, that's how he looked. The top one, I'll just mention this briefly because this really, really meant a lot to Ron. We have our log cabin up outside of Iron Mountain, Michigan, and he loved it up there. And it was very primitive, original old log cabin, and no running water and no electricity. We had candles and we had propane and all that kind of thing. So, and the lake, of course, is right beyond it. And he spent many, many happy, happy days there. This bottom one is not Ron's. This is a painting that we traded. It's Ron's art teacher. His high school art teacher did that, Ed Berner. And when Ron was in high school, he was not the best student I guess he wasn't so focused. Anyway, that's what I assume. And Mr. Berner kind of took him under his wing because he could recognize that Ron had, more talent than average. And if it wouldn't have been for Ed Berner, I think that maybe Ron wouldn't have found the path that he eventually took. This is one of Ron's more colorful paintings. It's really one of the first ones that he did of that size, and it's called Me and My Tipperello. And I didn't see him paint it. And now when I look back and I see all of these different styles and different media and everything, I sometimes think, I'm sorry that I didn't watch him, but I don't think he would have wanted me looking over his shoulder. But so this is belongs to the Rahr-West. Mrs. West purchased it, and actually he did have a Tipperello ever so often. So, and of course, all the paintbrushes and palette knives and everything. So that's one of my favorite paintings. Well, Ron, after graduation from Rufus King, he went to what at that time was Wisconsin State Teachers College in Milwaukee, and he got a year in there, and then he got drafted. And so he was always stationed. Well, he was always stationed in the States, and mostly in Georgia. And after I met him, he was telling me, all these war stories, of course, that weren't really accurate. And but he said to me, "Well, you never ever saw any commies in Georgia, did you?" He said, "So that means we did a good job." I said, "Yep." So these are two paintings that he did while he was in service, and this bottom one actually hung in the Pentagon. They had an Army art exhibit, and so he was very proud to have had that hang there. His photograph from the Army is looks a little different than the one he painted that he drew of himself when he was teaching. This is a painting that Ron did for the play A Christmas Carol. He did that for the cover, and I really don't know who actually ended up with the original painting, but the cover was different than what he usually does. He never painted something that for a reason that people wanted, or well, outside of his rabbits, people wanted rabbits. He painted rabbits, but this is unusual because it's a more of, you would say, more of a commercial piece, and it's very effective, very popular. The painting that you see here on the top is one of my favorite paintings. It's peaceful. It's when you look at it, it makes you think about where it might be, what he was thinking of when he painted it. It's just a pleasant watercolor, and it demonstrates his technique quite a bit. You can see the technique that he used in his watercolors in there, the reflection and also the frame. I like the frame too. This painting belongs to the Rahr-West, gift of Mrs. West. It's well, I would say it's pretty typical of a lot of his work. You can see he always had a lot of sky, and he had his brush strokes just minimal, really, but they worked. He knew how. He knew. I always said, it's like he's got paintbrushes at the end of his fingertips, because he could just do things that always just had feeling and meaning, and it looked so effortless. So this is standing birch, or it's black sand. And then what his technique, not a lot of times, but on some of his paintings, he would sprinkle salt, on the sky or whatever, and that would release the paint from the surface, and it gave a really neat effect. And he didn't tell people really how he did those kind of things, because he really liked people to think, wow, that's really something. Well, this is one of the paintings in the, I call it the racing series. And I really don't, like I say, we never talked about what inspired him. There were some things that I knew, you know, where he got the idea from or what did inspire him. But I think that it was just the fact that he liked the color. It was bold. And maybe he had a lot of primary colors to use up. I don't know. But anyway, they're really effective. And this hung in our younger son's bedroom for a long time. And we always just really enjoyed it and still have it. Racing has its ups and downs. He didn't care which way you hung it. So I see Greg hung it the way he liked it. When Ron got out of service, he came back to Wisconsin State Teachers College, and I had just completed my freshman year there. And I was an art major also. I have a BFA degree. And we were in all the same art classes. And he was great fun. He was funny. And one of our classes was weaving and fabrics. And that was one of the things I majored in. And he just was inept with the loom. And at the beginning of the semester, we had to figure out what our project was going to be, how many yards of warp we need, how many yards of weft, and all that kind of thing. And so when he handed in his paper, by the way, our art department was very, very small, very small. It was really, everybody was friends, and the instructors were all friends too. And he handed in his plan, and everybody called him Mr. Stokes because they thought that was funny. She says, Dorothy Meredith, her name was, she said, and Mr. Stokes, she says, what is this I'm looking at? She said, how many? She said, what, 500 yards of wire? And he said, yes, he was making an electric blanket. And anyway, everybody was kind of used to his humor. And I think that was the only art class he ever got a C in. But it was pretty bad. Ron and I met there, and that whole year we were just friends. And then he asked me out. Well, he belonged to the Vets Club, and he belonged to a fraternity, and I was not a fraternity girl. I was a GDI. That's a gosh darn independent. And so anyway, I went out with a couple of his friends, and so he asked me out in November, and I went out with him. We had a good time, and like I said, we had been friends for a year, and we got engaged January 10th. So my mother and dad were quite surprised. He had never been to Manitowoc, and he liked it so well. After he graduated, he stayed on and got his master's. We got married at the end of August of my senior year, and Pat was born the following July. After Ron graduated, he taught at John Walker High School, junior high in Milwaukee for 3 years. And my dad, I was from Manitowoc, of course, and my dad was on the Board of Education. And he said that one of the teachers was leaving, there was going to be an opening in Manitowoc. And so a little nepotism, I suppose, was involved, I don't know. But anyway, so Ron applied and we moved to Manitowoc. And so then he taught here for 3 years. And then there was a job opening at the Milwaukee Arts Center for, it was a CISA 19 program teaching social studies through the arts. And so he got the job, and we went into big time, Milwaukee Arts Center. And it was exciting. We met a lot of the artists that had exhibits there and receptions, and it was a different way of life. Ron worked there for 3 years, and then Mrs. Bradley offered a matching grant for the addition that they were going to be putting on the Milwaukee Arts Center. And so everybody's focus and all their energy, it seemed, turned to fundraising. And that really wasn't Ron's cup of tea, and he missed he missed, the contact that he was having with the students. So then, the head of the art department here in Manitowoc was retiring. So he applied for that, and we came to Manitowoc, and that was in 1970, I believe. And been here ever since, and of course he just has adopted Manitowoc as his hometown, loves it. So, and I'm happy that we got back here, and it's just a great place to raise our 3 children, and our grandchildren went to school. My mother and dad graduated from Lincoln High, so I graduated from Lincoln High. My children graduated from Lincoln High, and 3 of my grandchildren graduated from Lincoln High. So we go way back. These 3 paintings that you see here are examples of the lighter side of Ron. They're fun, and each one of these, the subject matter was determined by people who asked him to paint a certain thing. And Barbara Yost was into pink flamingos, and I don't know the story behind that, but she asked Ron about, could he do a little pink flamingo? And so he did probably about maybe 8 of those little paintings, totally different, than his watercolor. That's what was so unique about Ronnie, is that all these different styles. If you didn't know they were his, you would think that a whole variety of artists did this work. And it seemed like he never ran out of ideas, never did. And then he did the frog for another person, I don't recall who, and the rabbits, that's another story. I mean, years ago, he did, I don't know why he did the rabbit to begin with, but then he kept on doing them and people kept on loving them. Okay, this painting was done as a gift to the people of Kamigawa. It was presented on one of our exchanges, and it represents the city of Kamigawa and also, of course, the city of Manitowoc. And you can see some of the the familiar images of the car ferry, and of course the lighthouse, and the beer bottles that are no longer there. But he did a series of them, and the one that was used was, of course, very much like this. But then one of them that he did, and this is one that he did at home, so I saw it. He had an airplane flying from Kamigawa over to the States, and signifying the fact, that we travel back and forth and all that. But it was not a very sleek-looking airplane. It looked actually like that they were on their way to bomb us. The airplane looked. So he tried to wash it out, but it didn't work. So I think I still have that at home. It's really funny. It was never framed. These are examples of, collages. Ron used torn paper and, of course, his imagination. And they represent mountains. And I think that he told me one time that was another image of Kamigawa or of Japan, that he carried with him. And there again, it's another aspect of his imagination that never quit. This picture that is on this description has a story to it. Ron looks rather foolish, I would say. but it was a fun trip. It was a trip that we took to Ireland, and we were on a bus with the same people for about 3 days, and when we stopped at one of the places in Scotland it was a gift shop there, so of course we had to stop. And so Ron bought this ham that had all this orange hair coming down, and there were a lot of people that were getting back on the bus because it was time to go. And the bus driver, though, we didn't know where he was. And Ronnie got on the bus, and he said there's been a change in plans, and of course he had some kind of fake accent that didn't sound like anything really. And he says, so he says, I'm going to be your bus driver for the rest of the trip. And well, then of course everybody caught on, and, you know. But so that's a picture of Ron in the tam that he used. And that's also a funny story, because we were nearing the end of the trip, and I asked the bus driver, I said, now, what do you do after this? I said, do you have a break in between, or do you go on with the next tour? And he said, oh, no. He says, I'm going to be taken off, he says, for about a month, he says, because I'm having me cataract surgery. And so here we were on this bus with him all this time, with cliffs, you know, that were 200-300 feet, and he was driving around with cataracts, and we were glad we didn't know that ahead of time. On that same trip to Scotland, Ron was inspired after he got home to do this painting of, well, the hillside and the sheep. The sheep were everywhere, and you know, we always heard about that, but of course, seeing it, you know, in front of you when you're driving, when you're riding along, is another thing. And of course, that's where he bought the fancy tam with the beautiful red hair, and got on the bus. So not only do I have the picture of him with the make-believe thing, but I don't have this painting because Mrs. West bought it. And well, I don't know if Mrs. West bought it or the Friends of the Rahr-West. But anyway, he only did 2 of those, and I don't know who bought the other one. So those are, when I want to see it, I gotta come here to look at it. Ron started painting Christmas trees for our Christmas cards, and obviously they got bigger and bigger. But he enjoyed doing those, and people enjoyed getting them. And because, well, first of all, they were all different. Even though the technique was the same and the colors were the same, they were still just all different. And so this is one of his bigger ones. But I'm telling you, I can't imagine how many people in the city and outside the city have Ron's Christmas trees. Because even if they would come in the gallery and you know, see something that really appealed to them or fit in their home or something like that, Christmas trees always were great. These cards that you see here, well, actually they're not cards, they're just small studies of Christmas trees and snow. I think they're wonderful, and I just came across them, probably about 8 months ago in some of the things that I'm still going through of his, and I plan on having cards made of those, because they're different. They have depth to them. They're not trite. They're just miniature paintings, and I think they're very, very nice. These 4 paintings are examples of how diverse Ron was. The vegetables, I don't know how he started, why he started painting vegetables, but once he started, you know, he kept on painting until he got it out of his system, apparently. I don't know. But he's got a lot of vegetables, and people really, really liked those a lot. They were wonderful accents, you know, for their kitchens and whatever. And he really, really enjoyed painting them. So they're simple, they're colorful, they're beautiful little pieces of art. And the same goes with his orange and his apple and his egg. He's got the lace in here that you know, you spray over it to get the pattern. I like that one. That's mine. And in one of his classes, he was doing leaves and compositions that included, well, whatever the kids wanted to put in from nature. And he always, of course, you know, demonstrated, and then he would go off on his own. And so this is an example of one of them. And also, I must say this, his framing was really beautiful. The cutouts and the whole, the whole frame adds to the composition. So, and he had a lot of customers that liked his framing. And they also liked to come into the gallery and sit and talk. And I thought he was down there just working all the time, but apparently he wasn't. And Ron also loved old movies. And he said one of his very favorite, and he knew almost all the lines, was Young Frankenstein. And so that's another part of him that he also liked. While I'm thinking of what he liked, he also loved boxing. And so he would go with Ron Kaminsky and a couple other guys, and they would go down to Milwaukee and watch the Golden Gloves. And you would never think, that maybe all of those different aspects of, different qualities are all within one person. But I think really probably if we thought about it ourselves, that each of us may probably have a lot of hidden corners, you might say. So I'm hoping that you get a little bit of a picture of Ron, more than just being an art teacher and a painter, because he was much more. Ron was doing paintings with the trees, and a lot of people call them as Lollipop Trees, in 75, 76, 77. And I don't know what it inspired him, because he never really talked about what inspired him. He really, really did just what he felt like doing whenever the inspiration hit him. But one thing I can say about Ron, he was never idle. He was always sketching or painting, coming up with ideas for his for the different products that he developed for NASCO, which is an art supply wholesale place. And like I say, he was always busy. What we're looking at right here is an example of what Ron's palette looked like. It looks very, very messy, and when you look at it, you think, oh my goodness sakes, how did some of these paintings come out of that? But that's a true artist, that's how they work. Also, the item itself is one of his inventions. He absolutely was, he couldn't find a way that the paint and the brush and the water, everything could work handily. So he did a sketch of this, and he submitted it to NASCO. They have a catalog of, you name it, they've got it, in the line of art. And this base the center holds a plastic container for water, and then the container itself has lips so that you can rest your brushes across it. And that was really a big seller. It was very, very popular. And I found these two also at the gallery, tucked away. I think that he meant to discard them, but here they are in the museum. And these are a few more products that Ron developed for NASCO. The art word search, which was a really good way, like if the kids, there were always kids, that would finish a project early, and then they would be able to do something like this to the end of the period. So, I mean, that's really how it started. He was looking for something that was educational, but also would keep their attention, and that was one of them. Another one was Art Not So Trivial, and it was just like Trivial Pursuit, and it was wonderful. I don't know, like I say, he was never not doing something. So the decks, I think I have one yet, but it's a regular Trivial Pursuit deck with hundreds and hundreds of questions about art. And that was very popular too. And then the color game, that looks a little bit more simple with the primary colors and like Tiddlywinks kind of, and it's a combination, Tiddlywinks and bingo, it looks like to me. I never played that game. Another view, and another example, another interpretation of his tree period, that's what I call it. And this has been a very popular painting, and it's been used in promoting the show, and I think it's a really good representation of his imagination. Plus, it's something that you can look at and you really don't have to, you can imagine what it is, but you can also, but it's also visually easy to interpret. You don't, it's not something that you have to look at and say, oh, is that upside down or sideways or whatever. The colors are nice. It's very pleasant. Paintings like this, his trees, anchor both sides of the mural, and some of his work is reproduced in the mural too. He painted frogs at one time. He painted all kinds of stuff, but it was more. It's more of a playful. It's playful, I would say, and it was done. Erin Labonte just did a beautiful job. It was outlined, and then it was paint by number. She had the paint numbered and the mural numbered, and anybody from the community was welcome to come and paint. And it was just wonderful to see the people that showed up, young people, children. And I painted a frog, and that's the first time I ever dabbled in anything that Ron, was the creator of.
I'm Greg Vadney with Dolly Stokes here in the Ron Stokes retrospective exhibit. And Dolly, when I arrived here in Manitowoc, both you and Ron were some of the first people that reached out to me. And I got to know you, I got to know Ron, and I got to know Ron's artwork. One of the things for me that was so meaningful was when we arrived, my wife was pregnant. And when our daughter Anna was born, Ron did a little sketch of a duckling for her. And I understand that he used to do that a lot for families in the community.
He did. And he did a lot of little chickens sitting on a nest and little roosters. And depending upon if they had a boy or a girl, he would send, we'd have a little card. So that was fun. That was fun.
And I know we've got artwork around here that kind of is connected with some of those cards that he did. He was somebody who really lived his art every day in how he communicated with others.
That's very true. He didn't flaunt it. Well, I guess flaunt isn't the word, but just meeting Ron, you would never know that he had all that art in him. Yeah, but it was like, it seemed like it was just very natural. It was.
He didn't force himself to create.
No.
He was creative in his soul, and that just kind of came to be.
And he created things that, outside of the field of art too. He put a cover, we had a cellar door that was all rusted out, and he built a frame over it with plexiglass panels. And we always kidded him, he was not cut out to be an architect. It's a good thing he stuck with paintbrushes. Really.
You didn't want to build anything that somebody had to live in. Oh,
with him it was a creation, and he didn't know when to stop, and he would put another strip of wood here and another there, and I mean, it's still standing. It's still standing. I'm contemplating having it torn off now, but I think he's watching me, so
You got to make sure that you honor him?
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
The other thing I really remember, when I arrived here, I kept seeing the Stokes name on so much of our artwork, especially our art print collection, because Ron framed so many things for the museum.
He did.
And I think, you know, with his artwork, which we showcase here, we don't talk that much about who he was for the art community as far as like the person that you went to with your art. If you were another artist,
Right.
to be able to say, okay, I want this to look like it should be in a gallery. You know, his technical ability to do matting and framing
Right.
for the entire art community here in
Yes.
Manitowoc, including our museum,
Yeah.
put a huge mark, a huge impact on our community.
Well, you know, that always made him feel so good to know that he was framing some of these wonderful, internationally known artists, that he was having, was able to be a part of that, and know that when he saw it here in the museum, he could identify with it. That was nice.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to work with him on a few
nice.
of our things that we had Ron frame for us.
That was good. That was good. He actually he did a lot of framing. Well, after he retired and had the gallery, that's where he spent a lot of time down there and made a lot of friends. And as I was going through things, I found kind of like his idea of a Rolodex, which didn't make any sense to me. It wasn't alphabetical.
Not alphabetical?
Oh, no. So, but there were names in there that of people that I had no idea who they were, and he would have their of course their address and that. But it was totally amazing the contacts that he had outside of the city that people I never knew at all.
Yeah, and did he keep a lot of connections from the Milwaukee area from your time when you lived there?
With some of our friends.
Yeah.
Yes, we did, and of course, the years go on, and really fortunately, Ron was able to paint up until a month before he passed.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the paintings is here. It's small, very brightly colored. And he did a small painting for each one of the grandchildren for Christmas.
Yes.
And so he did this towards the end of November. And you could tell that, the colors were, well, like I say, very intense. And also the work was more crude, I guess you would say. And I said to him, the first one I saw, because he brought them home, he had 8 of them for the grandchildren, and I said, wow, I said, those colors are really different than what you usually use. And he says, I have a lot of acrylics that I have to use up in a hurry. So anyway, that first week in December, there he was, gone.
Yeah.
And
so kind of his final gift to all the grandchildren.
Yeah, and it was so wonderful at Christmas time, to give each of them their painting from his last painting.
And that gets to what we were just talking about of how he really used art as a communication tool.
He did.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah, and he always made, as far as art for me, his specialty was making happy birthday signs, and he wasn't the best sign painter, but he used a lot of imagination. He always had a lot of shamrocks all over it, all over him.
Oh yeah.
And I still have some of those. It's so hard to part with things, even though I keep on saying, oh, who's going to want this? What's going to happen? And so.
Yeah. So I was talking about how Ron had put an imprint on this community with all the work that he did, framing artwork, but he also made a huge impact in arts education, effectively as a teacher to an entire generation of students that went through Lincoln High School. Beyond that, statewide, one of the creators of Youth Art Month that has continued on for decades now. And I just, when we talk about what Ron's work means, we're not just talking about the paintings that are around us in this exhibit. His influence as a person, as an educator. My final time I think I saw Ron was right here at the Rahr-West in October of 2018 when he was critiquing an exhibit. So right up until the end, not only was he an artist, but he was also an art educator.
That's true. And when we came here from Milwaukee, we started the Courthouse Square Art Fair.
That's right.
And Mrs. West bought her first painting at that fair. And it was a painting by Mike Kazar, who was an artist from Two Rivers. And that started her on her path of collecting. And of course then, you know, she kind of outgrew Manitowoc and went on to, you know,
well,
famous artists.
We're very grateful that she continued to pursue her collection of art.
Yeah. So anyway, and those days, you know, we had the snow fencing we would get from the county, and you know, put up the snow fencing, and you know,
and just hang all the artwork right off of that snow
fence,
fencing.
Yeah. And it was really a labor of love, and we did it for many years. And then everybody gets kind of worn out, or you know, burned out, and then it's hard to find the people that are going to come be after you and do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And not only that, but art fairs got a little bit more sophisticated, and we still like that homey feeling. And artists,
It's a very Manitowoc way of, you know, grassroots.
Yeah, and the artists, and you know, you had to vie for the artists to come from, and they would go to the bigger, you know, Appleton had a big one then, and you know, different communities did. So we felt as if we had made enough inroads in the city with selling, you know, getting people to know that art is for everyone. That is not just, you know.
And that's, again, one of those big lessons that Ron's art teaches, is that art is something that's accessible for everybody to do, everybody to try. Even what you see in this exhibit, because it's representative of his, you know, his style changes, and he did what came to him really naturally from time to time, and what he did on in one decade was completely different than what he did in a different decade, and he just used the art to express himself.
He did.
You know, and a really kind of, that's the thing that really struck me, is how organic it was, how it was, he wasn't, you know, trying to be an artist. He wasn't creating, you know, kind of a lifestyle of an artist.
Right.
It was something that was just organic to him.
It was natural to him.
Yeah.
And the other thing, as an educator, he realized, of course, from his own experience in grade school and high school, that people are much more talented than other people, and so he never gave a student a grade on the outcome of their piece of art. It was the effort that they put in, and doing the you know, the best that they could. And so there were some really good kids, you know, that got kind of average grades, and then there were kids that really tried their best and struggled and came forth, you know, with a product that they were happy with and proud of. And so he would always say, you know, you earn the grade you get. He said, don't ever say I gave you a grade. He said, because I give you what you earn. So he taught them more than just art.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Well, always the educator, right?
Yeah. Well, what is so amazing, though, you know, we got invited to so many of his former students' weddings, and then when we started getting invited to their kids' weddings, you know, we thought, wow, this is going on pretty long, you know. So, but
that doesn't make you feel too young?
Yeah, but it was, I can't tell you, in the graduations, and then he had done a study of the Lincoln Tower, and so that's what he would give, you know, as a, you know, graduation
gift. That makes sense.
And so those are all over town too.
Yeah, I wonder how many people have one at home.
I'm sure. Well, so that's Ron.
Well, thank you for sharing, Dolly. This is fantastic.
You know, this is such a thrill. It's kind of bittersweet in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
Ron would be so. He was humble. You know, he just did his thing.
Yeah.
And he never expected, you know, people to, you know, say, oh my God, this is great, and that's great, you know. He just did, he would have done this if nobody ever looked at it. And for, you know, well, I think he knows what's happening now, but, you know, for all of this wonderful things that are going on, you know, in his honor and his name, makes me very humble.
Yeah.
And I thank you, Greg, so much for being such a part of everything.
Well,
that he did.
yeah. We love Ron, we love you, and we're so happy to host the exhibit
Well,
this year.
I'm happy that I brought him back to Manitowoc when we got married. So, otherwise, I wouldn't be.
This would be somewhere else.
I'd be somewhere, or he'd be with somebody else. I don't know.